of the Ashland Board of Commissioners in order. If you please stand for the invocation of the pledge of flag.
Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for our great city and the ongoing positive projects that we're experiencing. We once again ask you for your wisdom and guidance over this Board of Mayor and Commissioners as we strive to make the right decisions for our city and its people. Bless our city manager, our staff and employees, and our citizens. Bless those in attendance today and be with us throughout this afternoon. We pray in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Motion received and file the agenda. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Hearings and reports. Commissioners, anything?
Just want to welcome everybody to this noon meeting. We have many positive projects going on in our city right now. I want to make mention that First Friday was a huge success with me. I appreciate Ashland in Motion. I was down there and it was a great time, great weather, and great vendors. Also attended National Night Out, and that of course is facilitated by our police chief. We had law enforcement, fire department, EMT, and I would like to make mention that it was facilitated by the #1 chief in the state of Kentucky. And so I'm proud of Todd Kelly. And the last thing I have is just be safe. Our summer is winding down and school starts this week on the 14th. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Glad you mentioned school starting. I hope the paper warns drivers every morning, because when school's out, having been in school business 39 years, I drive differently. I'll have to admit, I drive differently around the neighborhood on Blackburn Avenue, but once school starts, everyone has to be looking all the time. I feared my girls, when they became drivers, I feared that they would go too fast, and I preached every day to them, you can't take back sometimes what may happen if you get a job or something. So just everybody needs to be more cognizant of that, and also when you get behind a school bus, don't get impatient. Not just because you're going to get a major ticket if you go around, but just there's so many of our students. We transport over 1,000 every day, and that's far more important than wherever it is you're headed, or where you just came from, or you should have left earlier or leave later. But you know, these are, to me, there's some sanctity every time I see a school bus and I see kids with book bags headed to school. That's what we're all about. Everything we try to do up here is for our posterity. So I appreciate you mentioning that. Anyone else?
Just to add to Commissioner's comments about school starting and the back to school era and all of that, Saturday morning, 8 a.m., Bill Ashland is doing a cleanup for the school grounds, all of the schools, all the Ashland schools. They're going to meet at Oakview at 8, or you can go to the elementary school of your choice, be there by about 8:30 to spruce everything up and get it ready for the first day of school.
Gosh, great idea. I know the school system appreciate that.
And what's going on after that, Amanda?
Oh, there's a pool party, but I don't know the details.
At your house?
No, at Dawson. Maybe I'll look it up and report. But after the cleanup at noon, I think the cleanup goes 8 to noon, and then there's a cookout at Dawson, just kind of an end of the season cookout that Bill Ashland's facilitating.
Terrific.
Well, touching on schools and stuff, where are we at with the crosswalks and enhanced signage for the different schools that we discussed previously?
I don't think any changes have been made on any of the signage. I know the traffic task force looked at that, and the traffic officers. I don't think there's any changes, Commissioner. I'll follow up on.
Okay. I just know we've had principals reach out to me, and I think others, and teachers and parents all concerned about specifically, and I think I mentioned this previous meetings, crab, specifically because of Central being a drop-off point.
I do know there's multiple signs from both directions, flashing lights. The crosswalks are properly marked. I'm not sure that there's any other recommendations that came out as a result of that. I'll follow up.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I know middle school,
Same thing.
South 29,
Yeah.
was a real tough area for us, chief, so you may notice some of these things we're talking about. The stop signs that you see, I think we have up in the hospital that has flashing red lights on it. That's one of the best signs I've ever seen, anywhere,
Yeah.
at any time. And what might help the enhancement around the schools, if we had caution signs with school kids, on it, with flashing. Before and after school, the other day when I saw that stop sign, I thought,
We installed
need
those.
something about schools like that.
We installed those recently as a result of the crashes that were happening at those two intersections, and I think we're continuing to monitor that, and we believe the ratio has gone down in accidents at those locations. We have not put those LED lights in at the schools. We do have the old style flashing, standard flashing lights.
I think it'd be a good investment. I mean, whatever it is, if it's a major expense, let us know. I think the commission would like to see that. I think the stop sign up there, which were numerous wrecks in that area. So those down considerably.
They are down. That was one of the worst, if not the worst intersection in the city. And the crashes have went down since they put those in.
We get your attention, and I like that. So that's something we'll get to, that enhancement of that. Anyone else?
I found the official flyer. The pool party is from 12 to 7 at Dawson Pool with pizza provided by Rapid Fire Pizza.
Okay. Great. Thanks a lot. Manager?
Just one comment, I provided an update on the whole internet network solution last week that we're having problems with our current provider on porting the numbers over. We actually have our first set of numbers ported over for our Mill Street facility and also Dawson Pool. So we'll be putting out a message on Facebook, but we ask the community to please be patient as we get into this new. It's really, again, a whole internet network solution on what we've done on security, and it has a lot of other parameters to it. But what the community will see was a change in our response on the telephone system. So please be prepared. There are probably going to be some hiccups as we go along the road. We have weekly meetings on that, which we'll have another one tomorrow, and by the next board I'll have a better timeline for when all of our customer service will be switched over to that new system.
Any questions, Manager? Thank you. This part of our meeting is public participation. If there's an item not on the agenda that you'd like to address to the board, I'd ask you to give your name and address and hold your comments 5 minutes or less.
Is that right? My name's Warren Howard, and I'm here in a different, I work for Ashland Community Technical College, which is part of what I'm doing here today. I'm also part of a campaign for the American Cancer Association, and they've identified 3 of you as what we would like to call participants in this campaign. You've been chosen because of your leadership and the qualities that you exhibit that we find appealing and role modelish. And I'm not even sure if role modelish is a word, but I'm going to go with you.
Sounds good.
Understand what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's but what it is the American Cancer Association. In the past, women have always carried the most weight in fundraising. Everybody knows, and in everything else in the society. But we'll just talk about fundraising this time. So what we need to do now is we need to have more men step up and take a more active role in fundraising, and especially in the area of cancer research and awareness. And so they started a campaign. It started in 2013, and it's called Real Men Wear Pink. And the campaign is focusing on leaders in the community that get out and do fundraising. Now, I know it sounds like free work, but what it is it's for a great cause. We're going to have a kickoff meeting in September. We're going to have the men that were identified, and I'll go ahead and clear the thing. It's Michael Gracie, Stephen Gilmore, and Matt Perkins. And I would have emailed y'all, but you know, I'd rather do face to
The element
face.
of surprise.
You'd rather do it in a public meeting.
No, that's
I would
not.
say no.
No, and that's what I was thinking. As soon as I got in there, I was like, oh man, this is not right. But what I do is I give it to you, and I'm going to give you the form of it that talks about it and explains it, and really all it is a request that you all consider being participants, because we're not asking. It's not something that we just run around and we try to get people, you know, to raise money or and if it wasn't for cancer, I wouldn't even consider even identifying and going into this. But if there's nobody in here that hasn't been affected by cancer, and this is primarily for breast cancer education awareness, but it's really for cancer in general. So I wanted to give you all your form. I feel kind of like a bounty hunter in some ways.
Don't feel that's a negative. That's a negative connotation.
Thank you, sir.
And
Warren, thanks for your work on this.
and well, I really appreciate it. And we'll be in touch.
Okay.
Is what, and I really appreciate you all even considering it. And whether you do it or not, keep up the good work that you're doing, and it's being noticed.
Like your pink shirt.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank
Y'all
you.
take care.
Anyone else? Sir, you can move your hat, please. Thank you.
Most of y'all know my name is Rob Odom. I'm from Ashland. My address is 1431 Patty Lane.
Rob, thanks for everything you've been doing.
You got that right.
That was one of the main things why I wanted to come here today, is to thank you all for letting the CoFest continue going. That one was by far the best one we've done so far. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. That Saturday event, I mean, there was 300-400 people pretty much the whole day. I mean, our numbers were over 2,500 people for a 2-day event.
That's great.
All the treatment facilities in the area were bringing people, and it was very, it was God touched event. And I had the center down here in Ashland at one time, and we ended up moving. Most of y'all know. I want to bring it back to Ashland so it can be more utilized than it just being a name and have a person or two come in, because as you all know, transportation for people that don't have a vehicle is an extremely difficult situation. So, you know, when we were here, we would 15 to 20 people a day easily would come into the center, and you know, we're not a handout, we're a hand up. We utilize our resources because, as you all know, I'm in recovery. I'm 10 years, 7 months, and 11 days sober. I count my days because all I got is today. But once we decide what we're going to do, I'm going to come back and speak with you all, and I want to be as transparent as I possibly can. I'm pretty sure that Todd Kelly would be standing beside me, and he does meetings with me. I'm pretty sure he believes in my efforts, just as most of you all do, if not all of you all. I've got 2 guys with me now that are going to step in with me. It's not 2 feet no more. Now we got 6 feet, and it's going to grow. We're looking for a location to start our transition house again too. So my goal is to bring more treatment here that's not a cookie cutter, that is you find the person where they're at, and then you get to know them, you build trust, and we figure out what's the best route for that individual. I'm not saying there's other places that don't do it that way, but I know majority of other places, and they don't do it that way. it's a set system. We're all different strokes for different folks.
Sure.
So, in the near future, I'm going to be more of attending this meeting so that you all can say yes or no, you know, or have a meeting about it and then get back, you know, come back the next week or whenever the following meeting is. But, you know, I've given my life to this. You know, I could be an operating engineer. I'm a fourth legacy. I have a card waiting on me. You know, out of the 181. And they make really good money being a crane operator. But this ain't my calling. This is my calling. And since December 14th of 2012, I have done everything I can to try my very best to make this a better place, help the people that are sick and afflicted, the hopeless, give them hope. Because I've been down all the roads I've been down them too. So, and my allies, Scott Hartman, he came from St. Louis to come down here. I met him last year and we've been talking for about a year to come down, and he lives with me right now. And J.R. Robb, and I'm Rob J.R. I'm Rob J.R. Robb. It was just, and his name's Scott, and Scott Drive and Scott Cord, and he lives right with it. Like it's God doing for us what we can't do for ourselves. So I appreciate you all's continued support, and sorry I'm dressed the way I am. My wife bought me this for my birthdays today, so I had to. I appreciate it. 45 years old. I never thought I'd make it past my 30s. You know, my grandmother didn't either. She took a for a burial when I was 17 because she didn't think I'd make it past 25. 20 years later, I talked to my old roommate at college this morning, and I said, "Who would have thought I'd be doing what I'm doing today?" So I greatly appreciate it.
Just keep it up, Rob.
I will continue.
We need that.
Well, all of you all know that I'm very driven, and I'm not doing this for self-seeking reasons. It's for our community. It's for our children. It's something that I believe that is necessary because I don't want our area to be thought of the armpit of addiction and drug overdose. And meth is taking a big step right now. If you go on Jail Tracker, almost every person there has got meth on them because it's so easy to get and it's cheap. So that's why we're making this push. We're going to try to push back. I appreciate you all. Y'all have a good day.
You too.
I have to go too.
Yeah, they're not sure where you're going.
No, they do.
Y'all have a good day.
Thank you.
And welcome here. We're glad to see you both.
Yeah.
You know, it's, I've spent 40 years in St. Louis, and it's bad up there. And then when Rob and I met, we started talking for the past year, and he started telling me things that he was wanting to do down here. And then I started doing some research between Ohio and West Virginia and Ashland. They've got it over there. It's not here. And some of the things that, and this was all God given, and some of the things that we're gonna push for is there's gonna be some lives changed. And even if out of 10, if you could save one, I mean, we want to save everybody.
Right.
But if you could save one, that's a start.
Gotcha.
But it starts with us. And, you know, he's told me that the support that he has from you guys, that's big right there. Because without the support of you guys, he's kind of shot in the foot. And he's only one guy. But I can promise you, this was a God thing. Before it's over with, there's going to be more lives saved, seeds planted, and it's going to be a good thing.
We believe that too.
I wouldn't have uprooted everything from St. Louis to come down here. I've been down here 3 weeks, and it's so gorgeous down here. Anyway, you guys have a good day.
Thank you very much. Carry on. Thanks, Rob. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name is Gerald Thompson. I live out on Laywood Drive. I have a question, not an issue. And I hope it's a helpful question. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not.
Most of the time they are.
But I spend quite a bit of time out of town, so I maintain contact by reading the paper and a few short conversations when I pass through. I am totally puzzled by what's going on with the Tourism and Convention Bureau and the apparent move by the county government to separate the county from what was Ashland Boyd County. This seems to me like a time in our history here in which we ought to be pressing for unity, not division. And frankly, it makes no sense to me as far as benefiting Boyd County, which happens to include Ashland. I don't get it. And so specifically, I'd like to know, what is the status of this? As I read the paper, report, was it yesterday, the day before? It appears time is short here. They've had the first reading on the ordinance at the fiscal court, and so they're about to do this. So this means if we don't think this is a good idea, the time to do something about it is short. So what's the status? What's our position? What are we doing? And is this really a good idea and I'm just upset about nothing?
Well, let me do the best I can, okay? I began meeting with Judge Cheney in January, shortly after he took office, and I remember in his campaign, he used unity and cooperation quite a bit, and he did that day when he came in. I think he met with the manager and I first. And I had met him one time before. Fine person, you know, wants to do the right thing, no doubt in my mind. And he had probably a list of concerns coming into office that he was dealing with, and one of them was the tourism, that he felt like either personally or others had told him that he didn't feel like they were getting their share of what was going on out of our tourism office. And the way it's set up is, obviously, the majority of hotels, motels are in the county, and for the last year or so, we haven't had a hotel at all. Actually, the last 4 or 5 years, we haven't really had a hotel in Ashland that would supply tax monies to run this tourism. So the money, 2/3 of the income for the tourism was coming from the county, and I think at some point they felt like that maybe that wasn't a good way to do this together. But he and I worked for 5 months together, along with the city manager, with the city attorney, in trying to keep it together. And we did find that we needed to appoint a new board because several members of the existing board, their terms had expired and had been overlooked, and not anything against anybody on that board. It's just that they weren't a constituted board at that point. And when I pulled Judge Cheney in, we began to figure out who the county was going to appoint and who I was going to appoint with this commission's approval to serve on that board. And it would be a new board. And I think I could very candidly say that he and I were together on all of this. And at some point, very recently, he found out, this according to him, and I can't do anything but believing that his commissioners weren't on board with him. That they thought it should go another direction. And we even met again with them and my counterparts here. And I used as much diplomacy as I could in trying to. I got down to let's take 6-month trial with a new board and a new direction for that tourism office, and he was good with that. And I had one commissioner tell me he was good with that. You know, after I talked with him, he was good with that, but it didn't play out that way. They have given a first reading, which they meet once a month, so I assume the first meeting in September they'll approve that, and they'll dissolve from this tourism office and start their own in the county. And I do think many times, including elected officials, forget that there are, 22,000 of us are Boyd County residents, and we pay a big chunk of the taxes to the county. And the truth of it is, the more you work together, the more effective we can all be and work efficiently with tax monies to provide for the whole county. And so with a split like this, we obviously are going to have far less funds to operate. Our hotel is open now. We think in not too distant future, they'll be producing pretty good revenues for our tourism office. And we will set a new board and we'll run it, and we won't run the board but we'll see to it that they do the things they're supposed to do, and we'll be fine. And I think the county, hopefully their plan, they'll be fine. I want them to do well too, because we're all Boyd Countyans. As I said more than one time in the paper and in meeting with them, I didn't say anything I didn't say to them face to face that I don't think it's the right thing to do. And I still don't think it's the right thing to do. I think at the minimum, they should have given us 6 months to see how it worked under our, we're looking closer at it. We've got a new board set, and make a lot of things happen for the whole county. But they opted not to do that. And I still wish them the best. We're still all in it together. We're still all Boyd Countyans. That doesn't change a thing. But we, as we normally do in Ashland, we'll do the right thing. And we'll get that office will provide and for an outstanding tourism program. And we have more and more things developing in our community that is a reason to have a good tourism office. So there are a lot of positive things about it. But I can just kind of, again, say to you, and I appreciate your question, it's not the right thing to do. It's halfway done. It'll be done at their next meeting. So we're moving on here, and my hopes are to set a board this month, our next meeting. I have a board set for our Ashland Tourism Office. And one of the things I have to look at is, and talk to that board about, is they'll have to make some immediate adjustments there, because the salary of the director alone is more than the money that they're generating right now. So whether it becomes a part-time office and with fewer employees, and it will be streamlined until we get revenues and the kind of program that office is going to provide are in some kind of synchronization. But we'll be fine, as we are with everything. But it's the right thing to do. So we're going to make the very best of it, and I hope they do too. And we'll still promote everything in Boyd County, as always, because we're Boyd Countyans. And maybe sometime down the line, somebody might see a different light on it. I don't know.
Mayor, I'm going to echo your sentiments, and I want to publicly thank you for the work that you put into this endeavor. I know you've been at it for quite a while to try to keep that organization intact.
We had a lot of meetings.
With the county. I know.
We had a lot of meetings. I thought we were fine.
And I wanted to just publicly say I appreciate that. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I don't think that it's a good idea. I don't think it's ever a good idea to split resources when we could work together. And I think it's very unfortunate that one of the first major acts of the new commission in the county was to dissolve a relationship with the city.
I too think it was a very bad move. I agree with that.
What I'm hearing is we're treating this as a done deal.
I think based on my 6 months working on it, yes sir, I do see it that way.
Well, I just have to tell you that generates enormous angst with me. I not only think it's a bad decision, it makes me frustrated, angry. I grew up around here just like you did. I remember back in the 60s when it was really kind of entertaining, the amount of friction that went on between the county and the city over all kinds of things.
Mostly sports.
Well, no, that's not true.
Well, when you were coaching, it was.
It'll be a beginning 2 weeks.
We managed to play a lot of it out on on the athletic field and the basketball court. But there was a lot of things I remember when I was a kid, people talking about annexation and services and, you know, fire and there was real county versus city, rivalry, friction, over resources. I thought we'd gotten past that. You know, that sort of stuff.
Felt like that too, Mr. Thompson.
That sort of stuff is what took us to our knees around here.
Yes.
That's why, for example, politically right now, half of this county's got one U.S. congressman and the other half of the county's got the other, because we do not stand up as a county. What's happening right here is not just an action, it's evidence of a cancer that's coming back. And we don't want to stand for that. We don't want to let this pass.
May I encourage you to attend the next fiscal court meeting and give them your thoughts as well?
I really wish that I could. Unfortunately, I've got a commitment in D.C. dealing with the love of my life, which is Iraq. And that's a problem too.
Well, put it in writing.
I'm sorry?
Send them a letter. Send them a letter, put it in writing.
But this is going back to the 60s again. This is frankly childish. And we got to do better.
Well, I'm
And
truly
if we're going to let this ride, with all due respect, I'm unsatisfied with our council's performance on this.
Are you
Well,
talking about us?
essentially, it's
I'm
the
saying,
county
you just cannot
commission's
let this
decision.
ride.
Well, let me explain to you. We have no recourse with the county government. If they make a judgment up there and vote, that they can do that. I mean, there's nothing illegal about it. And I'm certainly in their minds, there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. But, you know, short of continuing to have a good relationship with them in any other way we can. I mean, obviously this was built, it was already there. And I stressed that, the number of meetings we had, and up until 3 weeks ago, I thought everything was fine. And then it just dropped, which happens in political arena. You never know for sure what other people are thinking at the time. But we other than being very strong with my statement, it isn't the right thing to do, and I firmly believe that. They can do whatever they choose, and they've chosen to go that route. There's nothing this board can do about it. Our goal now is to make sure our tourism office is as effective and efficient as it can possibly be for the citizens of Ashland. And we will do that. We'll be fine.
Keep your eye on the money.
I think
Not a bad statement.
this board as a whole is disappointed in their decision, but it had nothing to do with us. We tried every way in the world.
Mr. Thompson, I hope other taxpayers feel the same way you do. I hope they do, and I hope everyone keeps eye on the money.
I will say this, you know, I don't see this is over, you know, this is just a chapter. And I have hope.
I'm worried about that part.
I have hope that as things move along, that cooler heads will prevail and see the benefits of coming back together.
I hope so.
I hope you're right. I really do.
I don't think it was the intent of anyone on this board for this separation.
And just for the record, Mayor, the timing of this is such that your final action, second reading, won't take place unless and until they have second reading and actually withdraw. In other words, Ashland is not going to take any final action until the county has taken its final action. But I've been in discussions with the county attorney, and my understanding is that they intend to go forward with the second reading, and that'll happen before our next meeting. That's why we've got our first reading. Because we have to take some action. If they withdraw, we have to modify the existing ordinances in order for the Ashland Commission to go forward. But we're not moving first. I mean, if they would change their mind, then we wouldn't have to have our second reading.
Okay, anyone else? We appreciate you being here. Thank you. Old business item A.
Second reading and adoption of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City of Ashland, Kentucky authorizing and approving change order number 2 between the City of Ashland, Kentucky and Tri-State Construction Enterprise LLC, increasing the contract amount by $230, extending the contract to August 9, 2019 for renovations of building number 3 at Safe Harbor of Northeast Kentucky, to be paid from Community Development Block Grant Funds.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I recuse myself.
Opposed, like sign. Any other old business? Consent agenda.
A resolution of the City of Ashland, Kentucky adopting, authorizing, and approving the course of action presented by the city manager on the items appearing on the consent agenda for the regular meeting of the Board of City Commissioners of August 8, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on consent
I'd
agenda?
like to make a motion to separate item 6 out of the consent agenda so that I may vote on the consent agenda.
Okay. Motion to amend consent agenda. Can you just cast your vote absent that number 6?
I think we'd have to remove it to
Has to
vote
come
on
out.
all consent agenda.
Got a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. So we'll remove that item for the vote on consent agenda and then reinstate it as a one item.
Yeah, we did vote on the consent agenda as amended with the removal of item 6 first, and then we'll come back to address item 6.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, like sign. Now, council.
And now we would have a motion to approve item 6 as removed from the consent agenda as a separate item as a recommendation of the city manager.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, like sign. Thank you. New business, item A.
First reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City of Ashland, Kentucky, amending Part 3, Conditions of Employment, C, Disciplinary Action, and Part 5, Compensation Plan, J, Step-Up Pay of the Policies and Procedures Compensation Plan and Classification Plan, as adopted by ordinance number 51, series of 2017, as previously amended.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Item B.
First reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City of Ashland, Kentucky, authorizing and directing the mayor to submit the program year 2019 amended action plan for a community development block grant to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development in the amount of $561,481, plus the carryover from 2018 in an approximate amount of $998,804, and upon acceptance of said application from HUD to execute on behalf of the City of Ashland an agreement with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to enable the city to undertake these activities and/or any and all other documents associated with the grant submittal.
So
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I recuse myself on that one as well.
Opposed, like sign. Item C.
An ordinance of the City of Ashland, Kentucky, authorizing and directing the mayor to submit the annual Section 8 Management Assessment Program certification to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I also will recuse myself on that.
Opposed? Like sign. Item D.
First reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City of Ashland, Kentucky, authorizing and directing the mayor to execute a utility keep cost betterment agreement between the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet Division of Right-of-Way and Utilities and the City of Ashland regarding work by the Cabinet's highway contractor on Winchester Avenue between 9th and 10th Streets at a cost of $1,835 to the City of Ashland.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Item E.
First reading and adoption of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City of Ashland, Kentucky, establishing the Ashland Tourist and Convention Commission, establishing the funding of the commission by the transient room tax and the composition of its members, and repealing ordinance number 25, series of 1982, and ordinance number 8, series of 1997 of the City of Ashland, Kentucky.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
This hurts my heart.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Item F.
First reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City of Ashland, Kentucky, approving an amended loan agreement with Tipton's Traditions LLC in the amount of $42,000, the remaining principal balance of the original loan, approved by resolution number 6, series of 2017, due to a change in ownership of Tipton's Traditions, and authorizing the mayor to execute the amended loan documents.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Item G.
First reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City of Ashland, Kentucky authorizing and approving change order number 1 between the City of Ashland, Kentucky and Southern Ohio Trenching and Excavating Inc. for a contract regarding the water line replacement on US 23 from 43rd Street in Ashland to 11th Street in Catlettsburg in the amount of $52,100 for the Department of Utilities Division of Water Distribution.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Item H.
Reading and adoption of a municipal order entitled, a municipal order of the City of Ashland, Kentucky designating the location of 3 bronze statues known as Vulcan, Venus, and Genesis at the Ashland Riverfront Park.
So moved.
Any discussion?
I have just a thought. Because this is something that we're not in the practice of receiving a gift and figuring all of that out. And I am thrilled about this installation, by the way. I would like for us to, one of the things that I think we used to have in place, and this is very convoluted and I apologize, but I was just sitting here thinking about it. Did we have an arts commission ever? Or if we didn't, I would like to.
We did something one time when Danny Craig was here. We have an arts.
An arts council, right?
Well, we declared
It's an
a
art
section
district.
of downtown art district,
Art
and that was
district.
kind of with them.
But was there a set of anything that sort of defined that? And the only reason I ask all that, and I'm sorry, I'll get to you in 2 seconds, let me get this thought out. The only reason I ask that is, obviously we're accepting this gift of art, and like I said, I'm thrilled about it. There may be others that want to give gifts. There may be other art installations that people want to put up, and I think because just blanketly accepting whatever would be well served to have some sort of policy in place that determines how we do that. So I think if we can do a little research on how that works.
I think we recently, in the last 2 years, we combined the former Trees Commission and a couple other commissions and put that responsibility on the parks, not specifically on the arts. But as far as, the riverfront,
I just
the
think
park
we're
system,
looking at an
so that'd
opportunity
be
where
something
we
to be
could
addressed.
become much more art-centric.
We hope so.
And I think a body of that nature would be very beneficial to us.
That's an excellent recommendation.
One thing, it's not an ordinance that would establish an arts council or arts commission, whatever. Maybe.
Yeah,
And I
I'd
can work
like
with
to-
you, Commissioner, on the
Thank
thoughts
you.
on that. And we can come up with something to present at the next meeting.
I want to get that out before I forgot.
Good idea. I like
Thank you.
that. Sure. Well, very few communities, certainly not our size.
Well, and we're sort of treading in uncharted water,
We
and
expect a gift like this, but rightly so. I'm hoping it's a catalyst for
I believe that it will be, and I
developing
think,
our community.
I think we've got to make sure that we've got our ducks in a row
Yeah.
concerning that.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Well, six, Commissioner, I appreciate that. Any other new business?
Mayor, I want to bring to the attention maybe for the Parks Board to look at, or maybe Parks and Rec with our law enforcement. I've had some complaints around the pickleball courts, and the tennis courts about asking if we could put no smoking signs up around the library commons there. Some people, it's being well attended over there.
Yeah, and they make a lot of messes over there.
Yes.
Mr. Murray, you listening?
Yes, sir. Got that.
It's not the first time you've heard that, is it?
And
Or is it the first time you heard it today?
Yes, sir.
No, I see the no loitering sign over there, but, I know it's a fine line between loitering and camping out, and,
Yeah.
I'd just like to see if we could address
Well,
that somehow.
yeah, I agree with you 100%. I'm glad you brought it up, and plus I think our police are making sure, I think, Chief, when the park's closed and we move people out of that library commons too.
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
And then the trespassing signs.
Yeah.
We're working
In the
on
process.
We do have a an increase in after-hours trespassing, and we're working with legal and APD to make sure that we have the right signage up so we can do proper enforcement on that in the near future. It doesn't address smoking, but we'll definitely take a look at that.
And I sent an email to city manager and I think to Sean last week as well about the riverfront walking trail.
Yeah.
The power bank there is being used heavily after hours. And I don't know if we can turn that off like we had to do in the commons, that kind of thing. There was a charger in every port of that the other night. So.
Yeah, you're spoken like somebody that
Works for the power company, I know, power the steel power. Anyway.
Well, you're supposed to look at that kind of stuff. I don't know, I can't answer that. Anybody answer that?
I think when I was at the library, I remember we had the conversation about turning off the outlets in the library commons, and that helped a little bit with the loitering. Because everybody was coming to charge and use the Wi-Fi and that sort of thing. So I don't know if that might be something we can look at as well.
And I've also thought maybe it's important to have cameras in that commons area, just because also it's the child splash pad area.
Yeah.
And that may aid law enforcement in identifying people that may be violating the law.
You know, I'm confident. I was on that library board for 8 years, and when we built the commons, I had to be the mayor and on the board of the library at the same time, and it just come out of the park board chairman to make all that happen. But I'm confident we work the library that Ms. Cosper will put cameras out there for us.
There's a camera on the outside of the library wall pointing into the commons, but I don't know how far it.
Yeah, and I'm with Commissioner Perkins, because kids play in there a lot. And we want it to be a shaded area, for goodness sake, so the cameras have to be mounted where they make a good shot of people. And sometimes if you have a little sign, small sign, of course, that says, under camera surveillance 24 hours, it may help deter some of the activity in there, even trashing the place,
And the Wi-Fi draws them in there, and we've had discussions with them about possibly turning that off, and that's met with some resistance, so.
I couldn't agree more.
It's mind-boggling.
Manager, you talked about that too. I know even when I was still on the board there, and I know it's just the same. Now I get calls. I had a couple calls this week from residents that go to the library, and all the computers are taken, but all the people aren't working on the computer. And I know it's kind of a supervision problem for the library personnel. You work there, but sometimes you have to take charge of where you work. And if somebody is not actually on a computer, then you go sit in the chair somewhere else. And then I had one call from a resident that there was quite a bit of foul language being used in the library that was fairly loud. And it, they didn't appreciate it a bit, but nobody seemed to handle it. I know when it opens, especially in the wintertime, when it opens, every table fills up in 2.5 minutes, because there'll be always people wanting out the cold. And I understand that part.
Well, and you have to sort of look at it is a free public space, and so it is I'm coming at this library world. It is the thought that is a space that is open and available to all citizens, and it's not illegal to loiter in a library.
Yeah. Well,
but I agree with you. I think there's a supervision issue.
It's kind of one person's rights end where the other person's rights begin. I'm in there trying to read a book in the library peacefully, and people are cursing and making noise, or I would like to use a computer and have people aren't even using it, but yet they're parked in front of it, studying. I know it's not an easy solution. I'm not blaming anybody at the library. However, maybe a little closer supervision. Sometimes if you don't exercise your expectations, just like you chiefs and police officers, the expectations are out there. If you're a teacher, if you're a librarian, or you work in a library, the expectations is, yes, this is a really good, safe haven for everybody to come and relax and read. not to just
Right, no, it's.
visit, carry on, and so forth. So people have to develop that expectation for those people coming in.
And I think it's also the responsibility of those free public spaces to make sure that everyone is safe.
Absolutely.
And I'm not sure where. Yeah.
So, everybody, started with Commissioner Goode, to Mr. Murray, down to the city manager, and to the police chief. But seriously, it does take everybody to make all these things fall in place. But Commissioner, thank you for bringing it up, because it's a major eyesore sometimes, looking at that library common. It's supposed to be so beautiful.
Well, and also, I'm gonna say this to you guys and anybody else who's listening. If the park is full of people who are there to enjoy the park, the people who are there not to enjoy the park will disperse elsewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't as citizens say there are unsavory people in those library commons, so I can't go. You should go, you should take your family, and guess what? Those unsavories will go where the other unsavories are.
Commissioner, that was brought up recently from folks, I think you mentioned at the splash pad. Parks does increase their presence there, and the police have increased their presence when they're not on our authorities, which does, in addition to our citizens that are there for the right reasons, that also helps with the presence. So, like I said, we're trying to work through the vagrancy here, the trespassing issues and the loitering. We'll add the smoking to it also.
And Chief, we know it's a difficult proposition for our police officers because it's a park, and you can loiter in the park.
Yeah.
But you know the players sometimes, and sometimes you can just nod and say you need to move on, and they know exactly why they need to move on. But it's a little bit of a catch-22 in dealing with people like that sometimes.
I was down there one day and I saw some things I didn't like. And so I get my phone out and start documenting areas that need to be, 5 people jumped out off the benches and left. And the rest of the folks there, I think really truly were there to enjoy themselves. And again, back to presence. But I sent you the picture that day.
Yeah.
So it
And you did get punched in the
I
nose.
didn't,
right?
no, I had one guy
that's
did go,
scary.
I think you're somebody I've seen somewhere. I said, you have.
Commissioner, another great point, if people do feel that way, they can call up. Remember, our 911 is not just emergency. So they can call up, they can report things that they think are suspicious.
I think, back to the mayor's point on signage, there may be a laundry list of things that need to probably be put together on a sign, a number to call, areas being surveilled,
Yeah.
all that, I think,
Yeah.
If you see suspicious activity anywhere in the park, please call this number.
Yep, I think that's a great idea.
I mean, we may be getting on your territory now, Chief. I don't know.
No, you're fine.
It's a tough one.
As long as your cell phone's not on that sign, right?
Yeah, I would appreciate it.
Okay, anything else? Yeah, we, at this point, we're gonna go in executive session on 2 items of potential litigation, and no action will be taken, only potential litigation will be discussed, and we'll adjourn or recess when we come back out. We appreciate you being here. If you don't stay, we understand that. Okay?
We need a motion to go.
Motion to go into
Second.
executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll let the record reflect we return at 1:37. Only litigation issues were discussed and no action was taken. Have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.